geopolitical uncertainty, concerns about South Korea, because again, it's one of our major trading partners, concerns about Japan and what is its relationships with China. And again, building upon the comments you folks made earlier, is that global factors, at least until the U.S. election starts to be more in view, are going to be probably the driving factors on the economic performance.
When we talk about China, of course, lots of focus this week. Does it have more of an impact on the U.S. equity market than it does on the fundamental economy?
Oh, I think clearly it's more on the equity market. There's a lot of exposure, a lot of interest, and the bet is on growth. And we've emphasized in economics divergences in economic performance. Now, we have a credit conference in New York focusing on divergences, and you're quite right. It is a divergence in performance in China relative to expectations that really impacts equity markets.
Well, whether it's China, the Middle East, North Korea today, all of it, this confluence of unpleasant events, you think it'll keep the Fed on hold this year?
I think it'll keep the Fed on hold more than what the Fed is projecting in its dot plot.
4 rate hikes. You don't buy it either.
I don't buy the 4 rate hikes. I think that's way too aggressive. But again, it'll emphasize more of the U.S. domestic economy, where people focus on consumer discretionary spending is probably an overweight in their performance.
Is that a reason why we haven't seen the US dollar react more in the last couple of days? Because traditionally it's the global safe haven, but the yen's been the safe haven during this fear factor week.
Yeah, very interesting how that has changed over the last 6 months. And it is an interesting factor that, that so much of the markets are overweight the dollar in expectations on performance. You may see less of performance than what's in the markets.
So given what's happening with the dollar, what you just said about U.S. stocks, consumer discretionary is the place to be. Why? On this idea that the U.S. consumer will remain resilient in the face of all this global turmoil?
Yeah, I think, Sarah, the story basically is more job growth, better wages and salaries, and improving consumer confidence, as well as technology is another overweight that we have, simply because companies are using technology and equipment to really achieve the output they need, given the lack of availability of skilled labor.
John, I have to ask, I'm so excited to be out here to cover the US election this year. Does that have a big effect on markets? Is it going to, as we get closer to the election, that the primary results will affect the stock market?
Yeah, I think you won't see that probably until late March, early April, when we narrow the field and there's more real hardcore policy discussions about economics, capital gains taxation, tax reform, regulation. That's going to really influence the market.
It is America's favorite reality show right now.
Yes.
You've got to watch the debates.
It's great.
They're amazing. John, given everything that you just said, you're positive on equities?
Yeah.
What would change your mind? Because Citi went to underweight this week. We had John Golub on from RBC. He took down his forecast before the new year. I mean, what would bring you there?
Just going back to your earlier segment. And just saying, if the global situation, Europe does not improve, there's a lot more of the immigration issue and the splitting of the euro, people not quite sure about labor movements in Europe. Japan, again, having a lot of uncertainty in terms of how effective easing will continue to be. And then, again, throw in North Korea a little bit, throw in continued disappointment in purchasing managers for China. That's the really global story, which is, I think, the influence in the first half of this year.
Maybe that's why you're seeing